Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today to talk a bit about LawBreakers. I want to bring you guys my thoughts, some of my personal feedback from my time spent in the most recent beta. This was the most amount of time that I got to spend in any of the betas, and even the original alpha test. I put in well over 20 hours. I had just had like 8 hours with the Titan alone, and like 7 with the Juggernaut, and a handful of hours with the other classes. I really dove in deep and got to play a lot of the game, and came away, well, with pretty much the same impressions I had when I played in Closed Beta 1 and Closed Beta 2. I was worried that maybe if I played a lot of the game, I might be able to reach a point where it wasn't as rewarding or it wasn't enjoyable anymore. I didn't enjoy the core gameplay experience, but that wasn't the case, fortunately. I just found that the game became increasingly more addictive the more I played it, and I started to experiment with the more difficult characters like the Titan, and ended up playing a lot of the Titan. It just felt like a very challenging, a very rewarding class each and every time I went out. Now, we could spend a whole million years talking about balance of the different classes, and that's not really what I'm here to do today. I already know that Boss Key is going to be doing their best to take a look at feedback from the community, as well as the numbers on their side of things, to balance the game to its best effect as we move towards full launch. I'm going to let them work on that because that's what they do. They're the developer, and I have faith that they're going to be able to put the game in a really great state as we push to launch. I want to talk today about the things that I continue to enjoy, some of the things that just were brought up. You know, for me personally, having spent much more time with this beta, both positive and negative. There's a few critiques, a few pieces of feedback that I have in terms of the interface and the HUD that we'll talk about a little bit later on. I'll probably start by saying that LawBreakers has become a game that feels very memorable to me. I think that's one of the most challenging things to do when you build a game, right? Is you can build a game that's fun, that's enjoyable, but is it memorable? Does a person think about it after they're done playing it, or after it's been taken away from them for an extended period of time? I think some of the best games that I've played, some of the games that I've enjoyed more than any other game out there, have always been very memorable. You think about them after the fact. I mean, just think about any game right now that you probably think about on a daily basis, even though you might have not have played it for months. Skyrim. Like, I only really play Skyrim, my modded save on PC during the holidays in the winter, because I'm weird like that, and I like to play the Frostfall mod, right? But I think about that game like every day. I think about Minecraft like every day. I think about Halo 2 like every day. There are just certain games that are kind of ingrained into your memory for the rest of your life. I think LawBreakers could potentially be one of those games for me, and I think it comes down a lot to its core gameplay design, especially those zero-G elements. There are certain manipulations that I've done so many times in LawBreakers now. Just the act of blind firing, rocket jumping with the Titan, you know, grabbing the objective and then just blasting my way across the map in zero-G with blind fire again and again and again. It's one of those things I'm not going to forget. It's like the BXR mechanic in Halo 2, you know, being able to nail that melee, get that reload cancel, and then just boom, two-shot the guy. You know, you just did that so many times in online play and in LAN play with your friends that you just think about it every single day, you know? It just crosses your mind, yeah, BXRs, BXRs. And it was the same thing with blind firing in LawBreakers. The crazy thing about LawBreakers is that's like the core gameplay. You know, that's not some like high-level, near-the-skill ceiling technique that only a few people are going to be doing. No, that's something that everybody does. It's a part of the core gameplay experience. And I think that's the coolest thing about blind fire and how you can use it to manipulate the zero-G environments, is that it feels like one of those like crazy cool things like slide hopping or bunny hopping in Titanfall and Titanfall 2. You know, it feels like something you do at the high skill spectrum mechanically, but it's just a part of the core gameplay concept. Like, everyone's going to learn how to do it, and everyone's going to have to master it if they want to get the most out of the experience. That's pretty cool. You know, and I think that's probably one of the most interesting mechanics that's been put in the game, dare I say, since the active reload in Gears of War. I still talk about the active reload all the time, and I don't know who at Epic Games at that time came up with the idea for the reload system, whether it was Cliff or Rod or someone else working there. But that mechanic to me is just genius, and the fact that we don't see it in more shooters always bothers me. You know, I don't think it's so much an idea of ripping off a mechanic. It's an idea of a mechanic that can add a lot of tension, that can add a lot to an experience. It just works so well in adding tension to each and every fight. It gives you something to do in a situation where normally you just press X and forget about it. You press R and forget about it, you know, and it's the same thing with these low-G environments. What they managed to do is remove the concept of having like a really advanced movement system like strafe jumping or slide hopping, you know, strafe jumping like you'd have in Quake, slide hopping like you have in Titanfall 2, and instead they just do it all through in-game mechanics. So each character having their own mobility mechanic that they can use outside of a zero-G, and then having the blind fire in zero-G. So it's, you know, it creates this, what is actually a low barrier for entry mechanic that feels, again, very like high skill ceiling. Feels like it's up there with like the most complex things that people would be doing. And there's still some of it, you know, the idea of maintaining momentum out of 0G into standard gravity with bunny hopping is probably the more high skill spectrum thing. But for the most part, all of the movement systems in the game are very straightforward and very well explained. It's just all about using them to manipulate your mobility and your momentum while you're in 0G. And I think that's the coolest freaking thing ever, man. It's one of the biggest things that I kept thinking about during the beta, and, you know, sitting here after the beta, like, what do I want to say about LawBreakers? That's the big one for me. All of that, I think, makes the core gameplay incredibly enjoyable. And when it came to the game modes that we now have with the beta, the inclusion of Uplink, which I liked very much, we just have like sort of a stacked roster of game modes that I personally really, really like. The only mode that I'm not the hugest fan of is Turf War. Typically, domination type game modes, I'm just not a fan of them. They're just not my style. But even then, when you had two really great teams and things were down to the wire, you know, being at B for like 15 minutes and hearing that call out, point B is a war zone, that was fun, you know? So I think a lot of it with Turf War was just about getting more close matches. But all in all, Blitzball, Uplink, and even Overcharge were, to me, excessively fun when it came down to the wire, when you had like a really great pub match and both teams are just going at it. There's a lot of communication. You've got great defense, great attackers. You're using all of the different abilities across the different classes. I'm running in with the Enforcer to disable the Juggernaut with my mag grenade so they can't, you know, pop a shield so we can run the blitz ball. Or maybe I'm playing defense with a Titan and using my slow grenade and then just ground pounding people so we can stop them from scoring a basket. The game modes, I think, just create a lot of great situations. They create a lot of oh shit moments, if you will, that are very memorable, that provided me with a lot of great times on stream and a lot of clips that I've already saved and sort of popped into my remember that moment folder on my PC. So fun factor, LawBreakers has a bunch of that. It's going to be exciting to see where the game goes launch date. Let's talk a little bit about the HUD and the interface. Now, Boss Key recently gave us the ability to scale the overall HUD, so we can go down to 50% or up to 100%. This is definitely a welcome feature. However, I would like the ability to do these things separately, to have each component have its own scale. For example, I would much rather have my abilities and my health bar be at 50%. I don't really need to see them any larger than that. I can read them, I can see the cooldown and when the abilities pop. However, that means that the actual match timer, the scorekeeping system, and also the icons for each of my team's classes and the enemy team's classes become next to unreadable. So being able to do those three components, my health bar, the game counter, and the abilities separately would be a really nice creature comfort. Now, when it comes to on-screen interface, you know, the icons that you see for where the objective is, where you need to go to capture different points in Turf War or Uplink, so on and so forth, I would love some sort of personal customization over these elements. Right now, the default, I found them to be much too large. In Blitzball, Uplink, and Overcharge, it's not often that they got on screen and in my way, but in Turf War, it happened really consistently, especially when playing more long-range characters like the Gunslinger. I'm trying to shoot at a target across B, and I've got this giant marker on the center of my screen that was genuinely distracting, that really did cause some issues for me. So being able to scale those objective markers, maybe even change their transparency, or remove them entirely in certain situations would be a much welcome feature. When we talk long-term, I don't really need to see where A, B, and C are visually on the map. I understand why these icons are so big and why they're there as default, and I think they should stay that way as default. New players making their way into the game are going to have enough trouble navigating the maps without knowing where they need to go. But as a veteran player, as someone who's put in, you know, over 20 hours just in this last beta, the ability to disable those things and only have like the Blitzball or the Uplink or the battery be visible would be much appreciated. Like, I know where the turn-in points are. I don't really need an extra piece of clutter on my screen to tell me where to go anymore. And again, even if I can't remove them, just being able to scale them and change their transparency would be super freaking awesome. I'm somebody who wants to get as much off my screen as possible because I really want to be able to focus on my aim and my precision. And knowing where the objectives are, I just don't need that hand-holding. I don't need that assistance, at least not at that scale and that level of transparency. Outside of that, guys, there's not too much else I have to say in terms of feedback for LawBreakers. I just can't wait to play the full release. I'm really excited to get my hands on the Harrier. I think that could be my go-to healing class. I'm not a huge fan of the Battle Medic. It's not a class that really flows well with me, but the idea of a tracking-based, laser-focused primary with that shot croc, and just the way that the healing and fuel station works with the Harrier has me very excited. Not to mention the ability to use laser boots. It's all going to be pretty freaking awesome come August 8th. Can't wait for the full release. At this point, guys, you know, there's so much information around the game. I've been covering it. Frothy's been covering it. A lot of people making content for the game. Head on out if you haven't already played it. Watch a bunch of these videos. The game's going to be $30 on PlayStation 4 and PC come August 8th. It has incredible netcode, by the way. The game played great throughout the entire beta, even when I was dealing with like personal bandwidth issues and the ping was getting it up there for me. The game still felt really great. I had very few, like maybe 1 or 2 instances where I felt like I was dealing with some sort of netcode with like the assassin hitting me from like 10 feet away, but I don't even think that's what that was. I think that was something entirely different. The game just plays incredibly smooth. It feels great, and I'm really excited for full release. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to play smart, remember to play to challenge yourself, but most importantly, remember to play for fun.